You thought her smile meant something. That the way she laughed at your joke, leaned in when you spoke, brushed your arm like it mattered, was proof you were finally enough. That for once you were seen, that you mattered. And you held on to that moment like oxygen. Not because you're naive, but because no one ever told you how deep the craving really goes. The craving to be validated, not by the whole world, but by her. The woman who, in your mind, doesn't just admire you, she defines you. Somewhere along the way, in your childhood, in your culture, in the songs, the stories, the scriptures, you were programmed to believe that being chosen by a woman is the final stamp of your manhood, that her approval makes you real, that her love redeems the parts of you you're too scared to face alone. But what if that belief isn't love at all? What if it's not even romantic? What if it's a lie, wrapped in centuries of philosophical camouflage?
And what if one man, with a cold, relentless mind, saw through it long before you ever felt that ache? What if Immanuel Kant, the man you were told only talked about reason and duty, quietly uncovered a truth you were never meant to hear? A truth so raw, so unsettling, that every instinct in you wants to click away before it sinks in. Because what Kant saw wasn't just about women. It was about you. About the part of you that needs her validation more than you need your own self-respect. And the price you pay every time you let her gaze define your worth. Kant didn't hate women. He didn't insult them with rage. He measured them, not with affection, not with sentiment, but with logic. And what did he see? He saw beauty, not intelligence, form, not reason. He believed women weren't meant for philosophy, not because they couldn't do it, but because, in his words, nature did not design them for it. That's the exact word he used, design. As if femininity was architecture and thought was a masculine structure she was never meant to inhabit. He wrote that women should be beautiful, that pursuing knowledge would rob them of grace, that a scholarly woman was a contradiction. And before you roll your eyes and dismiss him as outdated, ask yourself something. Why do you still crave her admiration more than her understanding? Why does her attention feel like redemption and her rejection like erasure?
Maybe it's because deep down, you don't actually want her to be your equal. You want her to be your mirror, to reflect your value, not challenge it. Kant, for all his rigidity, didn't see this as an injustice. He saw it as nature. He believed women guide morality not by principle, but by charm. That they lead men to virtue, not by argument, but by affection. She doesn't convince, she compels. Her goodness isn't in her reasoning, it's in her presence. She becomes the reason you want to be better. Not because she understands your ethics, but because you want to be worthy in her eyes. Her gaze becomes your moral compass. And when you follow it, you think you're in love. But maybe you're just trying to be enough. And if you pause here, if you let that truth sink into your bones, you'll feel it. The hollowness in every compliment you worked for, every smile you earned. Because if she's not admiring who you are, but who you perform to be, what are you really building? A relationship or a mask?
Kant didn't write this to hurt you. He wrote it to reveal you. He believed men act from duty, women act from feeling. That morality for a woman isn't a principle, it's a posture, a way of being that persuades without logic. And you
you've been mistaking that persuasion for love. Her kindness? It's strategy. Her silence? Observation. Her validation? Power. Not power through domination, power through direction. She doesn't need to lead you. She just needs you to need her approval. And once you do, once you connect her attention to your worth, the leash is invisible. She won't pull it. You'll hold it yourself. I used to think I was choosing her, that every time I opened up, every time I softened, every time I adjusted myself to make her smile, I was in control. I was giving. But now I see it. I wasn't choosing. I was submitting. Not with chains, with need. Kant saw that need.
Kant wrote that men are governed by principles, by universals, by abstract duty. Women, he said, are governed by the particular, by what pleases in the moment. That they don't navigate life through abstract moral laws, but through taste, through emotion, through what's immediate. And maybe that's why her approval feels so intoxicating, because it's not rational. It's not earned through debate or argument. It's instinctual. When she gives it to you, a look, a laugh, a gentle nod, it feels like a gift from God. But it isn't. It's feedback. And Kant didn't say this with cruelty. He said it with precision. He believed women weren't meant to study ethics because they already embodied it. That their virtue wasn't in knowing what's right, but in being the image of it, a moral symbol, an emotional guide. And maybe that's the real trap. Because when someone is made into a symbol, they become untouchable. You don't question a symbol, you worship it. And that's what we've done. We've mistaken her kindness for character, her attention for wisdom, her presence for permission.
We've built our worth on her gaze, not because she demanded it, but because we never learned how to face ourselves without it. And it shows. Every time you twist yourself to keep her interested, every time you swallow your anger to seem more understanding, every time you buy, build, or bleed to earn her affection, you think you're being strong. You're not. You're being conditioned by myth, by tradition, by a philosophy that told you she is your moral guide, but never your moral peer. Kant said a woman shouldn't be educated the same way as a man, that her education should be about manners, not thought, about elegance, not ethics. Because the moment she starts thinking like you, she becomes less beautiful, less desirable. And maybe that's the fear that still haunts us, that deep down we don't actually want women to know too much. Because if they truly saw what we are, not the version we sell, but the chaos underneath, maybe they wouldn't want us at all.
So we play the game. We become the version that earns her smile. And in that performance, we lose the roar. We lose the parts of ourselves that don't fit the frame she was taught to admire. And slowly, we shrink. Not because she asked us to, but because the reflection she gives back becomes addictive, and we chase it over and over again. Her praise becomes our pulse, her approval our compass. Not because we're weak, but because we were never taught that our worth doesn't need her eyes to exist. Kant didn't believe men and women were equal in purpose. He believed in harmony, but not symmetry. Man is the reasoner, woman the reliever. And maybe that's the tension we're still trapped in, a world that tells us to build empires
while secretly needing a woman's nod to feel real. It's a quiet war inside, the part of you that wants to rise and the part that just wants to be chosen. You pretend you're strong, but you wait for her text like it's oxygen. You pretend you're focused, but one compliment from her and your whole day reorients. And you think this is love, but love doesn't beg to be seen. Love doesn't collapse when her gaze turns away. This is something else. This is dependency wearing the mask of devotion. And Kant saw it before you were even born.
He saw that men would stake their identities on being desirable in her eyes. He believed women lacked autonomy of reason, not as an insult, but as a reflection of nature's different intentions. That their intelligence was emotional, not logical. That they could guide, but only through feeling, not argument. And we've taken that and turned it into a romantic fantasy. We say, she gets me, she understands me. But what if she's just good at sensing what makes you feel validated and feeding it to you? You've mistaken validation for vision. Her eyes don't see your soul. They scan your posture, your tone, your silences, your hunger. And when she finds where you're starving, she feeds you. Just enough to keep you hoping. Because she doesn't need to dominate you. She only needs to remain the source. And if you believe she holds the key to your manhood, then every time she smiles, you feel worthy. And every time she withdraws, you fall. That's not love. That's leverage.
And here's the irony. She might not even realize it, because she's playing her role too. The role that was handed to her just like yours was handed to you. The role Kant carved into the architecture of Western thought, that a woman's place isn't to assert, but to reflect. Not to challenge, but to charm. Not to lead, but to inspire the man who does. So now you're both acting. You, the man trying to be enough. Her, the woman shaping herself into what you expect. And somewhere along the way, neither of you is real anymore. You've both been replaced by projections, masks, built on centuries of philosophical roles. Here's the tragic twist. She craves something real too. But she's been trained by society, by biology, by survival to secure her place through influence, not force. Through intuition, not confrontation. Through approval, not truth. So she gives you what you want to feel. Not always because she's manipulating you, but because it's habit. It's design. And you drink it like water in the desert, too thirsty to ask if it's real. You were taught to conquer the world, but never to sit still in your own skin. Never to stand alone, unwatched, unpraised, and still feel like a man.
And that's why, even now, with all your strength, all your success, all your independence, you're still a prisoner to her smile, still a servant to her softness, still performing, still waiting, bending yourself to fit a mold that she didn't even make. It was handed to her the same way your mold was handed to you. And in that endless dance of illusion, you've mistaken chemistry for connection, performance for partnership. You want to be loved, but you've never asked yourself what you become when that love disappears. You say, she changed. Maybe, or maybe you never really knew her. Maybe you only knew the reflection of yourself you were desperate to see in her eyes. And now she's gone, or worse, she's still here, but her gaze no longer lifts you. Her silence, once mysterious, now feels like absence. Her affection, once sweet, now feels calculated. And you don't know who you are without it, because for too long you built your identity in the shape of her approval.
When that approval fades or shifts to someone else, you don't just lose her. You lose the version of yourself that only existed in her eyes. Kant warned about this. He said that when we place our worth in beauty, charm, and emotional resonance instead of reason, we become slaves to the external. That true autonomy isn't in being admired, it's in being rational, in being self-governed. And you've been confusing being admired with being valuable.
Kant believed men must act from duty, not desire, that we're only free when we act from principles, not passions. Maybe that's the way out. Maybe it starts by letting go of the need to be liked by her and committing to being honest with yourself. Because that woman you're chasing, the one whose affection feels like absolution, she might not even exist. She might just be a projection, a reflection of your unhealed ache to be seen without having to face yourself. And when she withdraws, you don't just feel rejected, you feel erased. Not because she's cruel, but because you outsourced your wholeness. You gave her the responsibility to complete a man you never became on your own. But this is where the story can turn. This is where you rise, not against her, but within yourself. You stop chasing her smile like it's a prize. You start building a self that doesn't vanish when no one's watching. You stop asking, "What does she see in me?" and start asking, "What do I see when I look in the mirror?" You stop performing masculinity for validation and start living it from principle. That's the shift, from dependence to duty, from emotional slavery to sovereign clarity.
Because she's not your judge. She's not your redeemer. She's not your mirror. She's a person, complex, beautiful, flawed, powerful. And so are you. The moment you stop needing her validation to feel like a man, that's the moment you finally become one. She'll feel the change. She might walk away. Or she might come closer. Not to the performance, but to the presence. To the man who's not hungry for her gaze, but who sees her clearly, beyond the myth, beyond the mirror. That's not control, that's connection. And it's rare, and it's real. But it only begins when the need to be validated dies. So let it die. Let the myth collapse. Let the story that told you her love will make you whole burn at your feet. And stand, not above her, not against her, but beside her, as someone no longer ruled by her reaction, but by your own reason. Because only a man who knows who he is can truly see her as she is. Not an object of beauty, not a gatekeeper of worth, not a reward for being good, just a woman. And in that seeing, maybe something true can finally begin.